Okay, so nobody wants to ask a question. That's oh, hang on, there are some hands. I see those hands. And this is a okay. Bev, do you want to just plant a microphone? And there we are. Brent, is it? First up.
Hello, Mr. Key. Hello. I'm Brent Reid from Marston. Sorry, I haven't got a question on what you call the big issues.
Yep.
But on TVNZ Breakfast, at the start of August, you said there'd been no prosecutions under the anti-smacking law, and a couple of weeks later you said there'd been 13, and then 5 days after that on your website you said there'd been one prosecution, but it had been withdrawn.
Yeah.
And my question is, what is the
right
actual answer? What's the right answer? Yeah.
It's the last one.
The
last one. So it's one prosecution's been withdrawn. One of the problems is, and Bob will tell us if he understands the law inside out in this area, is that the question is, have there been prosecutions? Well, people don't actually get prosecuted under Section 59. Actually, that's a defence. It's actually not the thing you get prosecuted for. So the 13, there is 13 prosecutions where there's been some form of physical abuse, but in those cases, it's the advice I've had is, even if the old Section 59 law was in place, they still would have been, those prosecutions still would have taken place.
Next, Mike.
Mike McKee in Wellington. Presently, it's illegal to smack a child for corrective purposes. Do you believe it is acceptable to pass legislation where it is the intent of Parliament for people not to adhere to it?
Yeah, well, I think the answer to the question is a lot of laws in substance actually play out a very different way. So to give you an example, it's not unusual actually to have Parliament pass laws where there's quite considerable tolerance. So as an example, if you drive 55 k's in a 50k area, you do not get a ticket. Okay, so it's not unusual. There's in fact thousands of laws that look like that with this degree of tolerance. The second thing is, and I've said it on Radio Live and TV and plenty of other places, there's no question that the current law that's on the books is a dog's breakfast. No one's arguing anything different than that. In fact, if you look at the law, there are 4 clauses actually of where you are able to smack a child. The 4th clause is something like in good parenting, isn't it? Good care and parenting, okay? The second thing is, the second clause below that says you can't, for the purposes of correction, smack a child. It doesn't, the law doesn't attempt to define what good parenting is, or daily care and parenting, or what correction is. And the truth is, no one knows. So we do know if your child is careering towards a light socket with 2 fingers and you smack them, that's not against the law. But what is good care and parenting? I don't know, the law doesn't define it.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
Yes, hi Prime Minister.
Hey Larry.
John. We really like you actually.
That's I'm very fond of you as well.
You've got 45 seconds, Larry, and you've just used up 10.
If he's going to keep talking like that, you should give him an extension of time.
We'd like to be behind what you're doing.
Yeah.
But we can't understand why you are going around saying the law is working well as it was intended, when the purpose of the law is to abolish the use of force for parental correction.
Yep.
When you're not Prime Minister, someone else may give the police new instructions, but that law is intended to change the way that I parent, my children parent, my grandchildren parent.
Yep.
And that's what we're opposed to. It's not got nothing to do with how many prosecutions are occurring now. It's that the intent is to change our parenting. And I don't know if you have your children coming home from school saying, teacher told me you can't touch me, but people who signed our petition were saying that all the time. You've ripped the authority out of our homes and we want you to put it back. We really do. Change the law and just simply send a clear message to all parents in this country that they can do certain things and they can't do others.
Was there a question there? There wasn't a question, I think, was it?
Well, I'll give him an answer though. Anyway, look, if you're right about one thing, there's what the purpose clause of the law basically says. But you can't sort of be totally selective. The law also says, and I accept lots of laws are badly written, this is a really badly written one, the law also says for minor and inconsequential smacking where there's no public interest, the police shouldn't go and prosecute. So effectively, you're in a space where, yes, I think underlyingly there's an intent in the law to say that parents should consider a range of ways to discipline their children. But I don't actually think the law says you can't ever smack a child. I think you can actually under the law, and certainly under the way Parliament wanted the law administered. So my personal view is if you changed the law back and adopted John's supplementary order, or private members bill, or you carried on with the way it's administered in the way that Parliament intended, I'd be very surprised if there's very much difference. Now, people might be able to point to a law as opposed to an administration, but on balance, I don't think a lot would change.
Thank you. Mark Beale.
Well, one of the fundamental issues of...
Sorry, I should just make one other point. I'm very sorry, Mark. One other point that I haven't made, and that is that I feel very strongly about the fact that if the law isn't administered the way that Parliament intended it, which was to say, if you lightly smack a child, you shouldn't be prosecuted, and you certainly shouldn't be investigated. If the law doesn't work, and people do start getting arrested or start getting prosecuted, I'm going to change the law. So your argument is, well, someone else could administer it differently when I'm not Prime Minister. Someone else could change the law when I'm not Prime Minister. It goes both ways. In the end, I think the society's building up a way that sees these things.
So could I just put a question that I put to Phil Goff?
Yeah.
He made that same statement, and I said to him, if the evidence is put before you, will you read it? He wouldn't answer it. Well, I don't think he answered it.
I've read the cases that you sent me, and one of them was in my electorate, actually.
So a smack on the leg of a child as they're driving along because she's just told the cops to stuff off?
Well, I don't think you'd get arrested for that.
But he was convicted.
Well, for reasons I can't go into the individual cases, and you'll sort of appreciate why, because I've gone and done a bit more work on them, so I won't go there. But what I can say to you is, one of the reasons we've got Nigel involved is that I'm not interested in the public getting sanitised information and us trying to hide the facts or anything like that. I want the information displayed in a way every 6 months in the paper so people can see it. And if the number of prosecutions or the number of complaints or the number of people getting harassed starts rising, for no good reason, we'll change the law. If it doesn't, then hopefully people will feel confident. Because the last thing I want is a parent to be sitting in their home feeling terrified, because I think most parents in their life at some point will smack a child. Like, that's human nature. I think that be it for a variety of reasons, good or bad, but I think it will happen. And the last thing I want is, for a child to get lightly smacked by a parent for a variety of reasons, whatever it might be, and the parent spend the rest of the day terrified that they're going to lose the child. Because I think that's wrong.
Okay, Mark.
I want to ask a slightly deeper philosophical question on this, John. One of the fundamental issues of stable family life is actually respect, especially respect of children towards parents. And for me, the dilemma of this debate over Section 59 in the law is that it undermines this respect. As a government, what are you going to do to help restore the need of respect? Because often Parliament is portrayed in its own behaviour as showing a lack of respect towards people, towards process, towards democracy and law.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. The sorts of values and the kind of culture we have evolves in a lot of different ways. Part of it's out of our control. I think the internet's had quite a big impact on that. The importation, when you look at the youth gang issues, a lot of these young people are terribly misguided, but they're nevertheless following what they see in LA or the Crips doing overseas, or all sorts of things which are imported into New Zealand. So partly it's hard to control that, but it's nevertheless there. I think secondly, you can ultimately send a message in the way you do things. I actually, in the end, voted against the prostitution law. I actually think it's a bit of a crazy law, actually, where in the old law, where you could buy sex and not be guilty, but sell sex and you were. I actually think it's grossly unfair on the people that are selling sex. I'm not saying it's something I would want to do, but I'm just saying that I understand the position, and I think it's terrible where you're prosecuting one side and not prosecuting the other. But the reason in the end I voted against the prostitution law was I had to be able to look New Zealand parents in the eye and say,